The only reason you took the night shift was that the work was hardly tiring at all. Not much ever happened here to surprise you, at least not that night, until you heard that sound coming from the forest. After working for years as a cashier at a large supermarket, you took the night shift at a small lumber mill in the middle of the forest because you wanted a quieter job. The work is pretty easy. You greet the incoming trucks, check their paperwork, and enter the data into the system. The mill is located just outside a small town in northern Idaho. The nearest town is more than 2 hours away. Behind the mill, pine forests stretch as far as the eye can see. On the night shift, as long as no trucks are arriving, it gets so quiet that you can easily hear even the faintest sound coming from the forest. That night, too, the first few hours pass as usual. After the last truck leaves, you return to the office and sit down at your computer. You wait a while longer for anyone else to arrive. As midnight approaches, you hear the sound of an axe coming from the forest behind the factory, one after another. You stand there quietly, listening for a while. The sound continues at regular intervals. After listening a little longer, you realize this isn't a distant sound. It's coming from quite close by. Most of the trees right behind the factory belong to the company. They're being cut down according to a specific plan. That's why it's not at all normal to hear the sound of an axe coming from there at midnight. You grab your flashlight and start walking toward the direction of the sound. As you get closer to the woods, the sound becomes even clearer. You look around, but there's no one in sight. There's neither a felled tree nor any sign that a person has been there. Despite this, the sound of the axe doesn't stop. As you sweep the flashlight around, the light catches on the branches for a moment. At first, you can't figure out what it is. When you take a few steps closer and point the flashlight upward, you realize the sound is coming from there. A small speaker, camouflaged with green netting, is hanging among the branches. The sound of an axe is playing from it at regular intervals. You take the speaker down from the branch and turn off the sound. You turn it over in your hands and examine it for a while. The first thing that comes to mind is why someone would go to the trouble of hanging this here. It takes time to set something like this up. But why? You check the area one last time. Seeing no one, you take the speaker with you and head back to the factory. When you get back, you notice that your office window is open a few centimeters. You feel like you remember closing it before you left, but you can't be sure. It leaves you with a strange feeling, as if you've missed something. Still, without dwelling on it too much, you set the speaker down on the desk and step inside. The night returns to its usual silence, but a feeling inside you tells you this isn't normal. You try to distract yourself for a while. Just as you start to think you're making too much of what happened, the headlights near the entrance catch your attention. As you approach the entrance, you realize it's an old pickup truck. The paint is faded in places, and one of the headlights is a bit dimmer than the other. The driver rolls down his window and says he's here for the loading scheduled for tonight. You check the shipping list, but there's neither a license plate number nor a company name on it. You tell him you might have come to the wrong facility. The man doesn't seem surprised for a moment. He simply nods slightly and asks you to check the system. There's no discernible expression on his face. He's neither getting angry nor trying to explain himself. He says this so calmly that you start to wonder if you might have actually overlooked something. When you open the computer and check the log system, you do indeed see a vehicle entry created for 2 a.m. The truck's license plate, delivery details, everything has been entered into the system completely. But you had checked the system a few hours ago, and there was no record at that time. Even though you're not entirely convinced, you open the barrier because the system shows a record. The pickup truck slowly drives in and heads toward the loading area. This time, you decide to look not only at the vehicle record but also at the system's transaction history. You open the log records and begin examining the entries one by one. The record appears to have been created for 2 a.m., but it was entered into the system at 1:03 a.m., meaning it was entered about an hour ago. Your throat tightens because you remember very clearly that you weren't in the office at that time. You immediately go outside and tell them to stop the loading. You try to explain that you couldn't reach the factory owner, so no logs can leave the facility. Both of them turn to look at you but don't say a word. They continue loading. You take a few more steps closer and shout again, this time in a harsher tone. Again, they show no reaction. In that moment, you realize you can't physically stop them. You pull out your phone and call the police. After watching you for a few seconds, the men drop the logs they've been loading and get into their pickup truck. They don't argue, nor do they rush. They start the engine and quietly drive out of the facility just as quietly as they arrived. About 20 minutes later, the police arrive. After explaining what happened, you play back the security camera footage. As the police officer rewinds the footage, you can't take your eyes off the screen. The footage shows the moment you grab your flashlight and walk toward the woods behind the factory. Just a few seconds later, what you've been waiting for happens. As you move toward the speaker, a hooded figure enters through the factory's back door. He doesn't hesitate at all. Without looking around, he heads straight for the office. As soon as he enters, he sits down at the computer. For about 40 seconds, he works quickly on the keyboard and mouse. Then he stands up, quietly exits through the door he came in, and disappears into the darkness. The whole thing takes less than a minute. The police pause the footage. They zoom in several times to try to see the man's face, but his face isn't visible in any of the frames. The hood never slips off his head. He doesn't look at the cameras even once. As if he knew exactly where the blind spots were, he completely disappears from view within a few seconds. The police said they would launch an investigation into the incident after obtaining the system logs and a copy of the camera footage, then left. After that night, neither the van nor the man from the camera footage is ever seen again. But you never forget what even stepping away from your computer for just a few minutes that night could have cost you. You've been working at this gas station for the past 3 months. It's a small gas station situated on the edge of a narrow pass nestled among the mountains. After dark, it feels just like that one gas station where you're forced to stop after missing the last exit. Actually, you weren't supposed to stay for the night shift tonight, but the night worker who was supposed to relieve you sent a message at the last minute. In the message, he wrote that his brother had left the house keys inside and that he had to go help him. Even though the excuse doesn't seem very convincing to you, since there's no one else to take his place, you grudgingly agree to stay on shift. You've been on your feet for about 14 hours now. This day, which started early in the morning, has piled on the afternoon rush, the evening hustle, and now this unexpected night shift, one on top of the other. Even though you've had your third cup of coffee, you're struggling to keep your eyes open. Your eyelids are getting heavy, and you catch yourself zoning out, even if just for a few seconds. You try to keep yourself constantly busy to stay awake. You pull products forward on the shelves, rearrange the chip display, and line up the drinks in the coolers one by one. Even though there's not much left to do, you know that the moment you stop moving, your eyes will close. Just then, a loud thud comes from outside. The sound is so clear that you jump as if someone had kicked one of the gas pumps. You look out the window, but there's no one in sight. Just the faint light shining on the pumps and the darkness stretching out behind them. Still, you want to check. You slowly walk around the pumps, inspecting the metal bodies one by one. Despite the sound being as loud as the impact, there's no sign of anything out of the ordinary. As you check the back of the building, your eye catches the handle of the storage room door. Your attention is drawn to fresh, shiny scrape marks on the metal around the lock, peeking through the old rust. It looks as if someone had recently tried to force the lock open with a hard object. You pause for a few seconds to examine it, but you chalk it up to fatigue and head back inside without dwelling on it. Once back inside, you try to focus on your work, but you just can't seem to. Before even a few minutes have passed, you involuntarily lift your head and look out the front window. There's nothing out there that should be bothering you. Still, an indescribable unease is growing inside you. You set aside what you're doing and walk over to the window, staring intently at the parking lot and the area with the gas pumps. When you see nothing, you return to your spot. But a few minutes later, you find yourself back at the same spot. You can't explain why this is happening. A strange feeling won't leave you, as if something were about to happen outside the moment you take your eyes off the window, or as if someone were silently watching you from the darkness. At one point, you even think you see someone out of the corner of your eye slipping into the woods among the trees. When you look again reflexively, however, you see nothing but darkness. You wonder if your exhaustion might be making all of this feel worse than it really is. Deciding that a little rest would do you good, you head to the staff room around 2 in the morning. You sit down in the old chair and take a deep breath. You lean your head back, wanting just a few minutes of rest. The moment you close your eyes, you're overcome by sleep. You don't know how many minutes have passed. Suddenly, you jolt upright at the sound of the front door opening. For a few seconds, you can't even quite figure out where you are. Then, remembering the sound you heard, you jump to your feet and run toward the front. It's quiet all around. The front door is closed. When you look out the window, you see that the parking lot is completely empty. Even though you're almost certain someone came in just a moment ago, there's not a single car outside, nor is there a single trace left behind. About 10 minutes later, a faint metallic sound comes from the storage room downstairs. At first, you don't pay it any mind. A few seconds later, the same sound is heard again. This time, it doesn't sound anything like the creaking of old shelves. You stand at the top of the stairs leading down to the storage room and listen for any sounds below. It's completely silent. After waiting a few seconds, you slowly look down. At first, you can't make out anything but darkness. As your eyes begin to adjust to the dim light, the shelves gradually come into view. Then, you notice someone standing motionless in the darkness between the shelves. Suddenly, you lock eyes with the man standing in the storage room. He's holding an open bag of chips. Without taking his eyes off you, he takes a chip from the bag and pops it into his mouth. Without taking his eyes off you, he raises his right hand and signals for you to be quiet. For a moment, you can't move. You can't take your eyes off the man. He, meanwhile, takes another chip from the bag and pops it into his mouth. The expression on his face doesn't change at all. Then he takes a slow step toward you. At that very moment, you stumble backward and head for the stairs. You practically run up them. As soon as you've climbed the first few steps, you hear footsteps behind you. He's coming up the stairs slowly but without haste. When you reach the cash register area, the man also comes up the stairs. You reach for your phone on reflex, but the man isn't coming toward you. Without saying a word, he heads for the nearest shelf. He opens his backpack and fills it with a few bags of chips and some chocolate. He's neither in a hurry nor looking around. He acts as if he hadn't sneaked into a deserted gas station at midnight, but were simply finishing his shopping like any ordinary customer. After putting a few bags of chips and some chocolate bars into his backpack, the man heads toward the register. He pulls a crumpled $100 bill from his pocket and places it on the counter. You expect him to say something. Maybe he'll offer an explanation, or perhaps he'll want you to react. But nothing happens. He just stands there for a few seconds. He isn't looking at you, nor is he in a hurry. While you're still trying to figure out what to do, the man turns around and heads for the door. He pauses for a brief moment before opening the door and glances at you over his shoulder. There's no anger on his face, no threat, just a strange calmness you can't quite explain. Then he opens the door and steps out into the night. A few seconds later, his footsteps outside fade away. You stay where you are for a while. Your hand is still on the phone, but you're not even sure who you should call. You look at the crumpled $100 bill on the counter. Nothing about what just happened makes any sense. You think about telling someone what happened that night, but you're not sure anyone would believe you, and you still don't know the answers to those same questions. Why was that man in the storage room? For about 4 years now, you've been working the night shift at a 24-hour truck stop on Interstate 80 in Wyoming. The nearest town is about an hour away. Most of the people who stop by here at night are truck drivers who've been behind the wheel for hours. Some quietly come in and grab a coffee. Others sleep for a few hours before hitting the road again. After 3 a.m., the facility becomes almost completely silent. Occasionally, a truck pulls in. Then everything returns to silence just as it was before. Since you've been working here for 4 years, you can roughly predict how many people will arrive at any given hour. As 2 a.m. approaches, you decide to step outside for a few minutes to get some fresh air. Wyoming's cool night air hits your face. As you stand in front of the facility for a moment, taking in your surroundings, you notice a silhouette walking with heavy steps out of the darkness in the distance. Your first thought is that their car might have broken down somewhere. But at this hour, with the nearest town about an hour away, it still seems strange that someone would have walked all the way out here alone. As the man approaches, you make out the pink children's backpack he's carrying, covered in cartoon characters. That's when the scene starts to feel even stranger. You watch the man for a little while longer, then head back inside without giving it much thought. Unexpected encounters like this are nothing new to you on the night shift. A few minutes later, the front door opens. You realize the person coming in is the same man you saw outside just a moment ago. The man approaches the front desk and asks if there's an empty room where he can stay for the night. His voice is soft as he speaks, as if he hasn't spoken much in a long time. You check the system, see there's an available room, but tell him you can't give him a room without ID. The man reaches into his pocket and pulls out a few crumpled bills and some loose change. He says he's lost his wallet and ID. As he says this, he's simply explaining the situation. He doesn't say much else. The man just shakes his head and puts his money back in his pocket. After thanking you, he walks over to one of the tables in the seating area and sits down quietly. He sits at the same table for about 40 minutes. He's placed the pink bag next to him. Every now and then, he unzips it, looks inside, fiddles with something, then zips it back up. You can't quite figure out what he's looking for or what he's doing. Your eyes drift toward him a few times, but you don't dwell on it and go back to your work. A little while later, another customer walks in. A few minutes pass while you're attending to them. After the customer finishes their business and leaves, your gaze drifts back to the seating area. The man who was sitting at the table a moment ago is gone. The pink bag, however, is still there. You look toward the entrance. When you step outside, you check the parking lot and both sides of the street, but you don't see anyone. It's as if the man vanished in the space of a few minutes. Toward the end of your shift, you decide to take the bag to the lost and found room. Normally, employees aren't allowed to touch customers' belongings. But that bag, sitting there all night, keeps tugging at your mind, especially the way the man handled it. You want to know what's inside. After hesitating for a few seconds, you unzip it. When you open it, you see a few old items inside. A single leather glove, a rusty key, and a motel room key card that looks like it was used years ago. They all seem to be from a different time. There's nothing in the bag that could belong to its owner. Just a few items whose purpose you can't fathom. You hold the bag in your hand for a few more seconds. For some reason, the items inside are on your mind, though you don't know why. Finally, you zip it closed, put it in the lost and found cabinet, and leave a small note on top. The next night, as the clock nears 2 again, the front door opens. When you look up, you recognize the person coming in immediately. It's the same man who left the pink bag behind last night. He walks up to the counter. "I left my bag here last night," he says. You go to the lost and found cabinet, retrieve the bag, and set it down in front of him. The man takes the bag. He doesn't even open the zipper to look inside. He just slings it right over his shoulder. The man slings the bag over his shoulder and starts walking toward the exit. Just then, a truck driver walks in and says he wants to spend the night here. You check the room registry and reach for the key ring. The key to the last room is missing. Thinking you might have looked in the wrong place, you check the key ring again. Then you look at the other hooks on the counter and in the drawers. The key is nowhere to be found. Unable to find the key, you think of the man who just left. You reflexively look toward the entrance. He's not there. You ask the truck driver to wait a few minutes and check the key rack one last time. Then you start walking toward the room at the end of the hallway. You pause for a few seconds in front of the door and listen first. A faint scraping sound comes from inside. You knock once. There's no answer. You wait a few more seconds and knock a little harder this time. Just as you're about to turn back, thinking no one's inside, you hear the lock click open. The door creaks open slowly. Standing there is the man with the pink bag. "I needed to sleep for an hour," he says. His voice is just as calm. As he says this, he's neither trying to explain himself nor apologizing. It's as if what he said was answer enough. You tell him you're going to call the police. After staring at you for a few seconds, the man pulls the key out of his pocket and places it on the bed. Then he turns and walks out into the hallway. A few seconds later, you hear the front door open and close. As you bend down to pick up the key, the facility brochure on the edge of the bed catches your eye. You pick it up and flip through it. Notes have been jotted down on the back with a ballpoint pen. Room numbers, security camera locations, doors used by staff. At the bottom of the page, there's a single sentence. The front desk is unstaffed after 3:15 a.m. You stare at the brochure for another moment. Two things remain in your mind from that night: the meaningless items inside the pink bag and the notes on the back of the brochure. You never find out if there was really a connection between the two, or if they were just random items carried in the same bag.